Hi everybody, end of the week, Friday in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordo. Peter Clayton is with us, and we're very glad that you are. You're either watching us on Facebook. Somebody messaged me that they did go to YouTube and couldn't find us on YouTube. And yet...
well, I have found it on YouTube.
Yeah, they said they could find the old Courts of Public Opinion. Well, let's hope it is there. But you might be watching us on YouTube or Facebook or indeed as a podcast somewhere. And I hope we're coming through loud and clear. Before we talk about stuff, let me wish you a happy birthday or a happy wedding anniversary. March the 3rd, 1943, the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. Australian and American air forces devastate Japanese naval forces. Good. I'm not exactly sure what the turning of the tide of the Second World War was, but probably it would have been the Battle of the Coral Sea, perhaps Midway. Anyway, we won. That's the most important thing. 1847, Alexander Graham Bell, Scottish-born, American-British inventor, the telephone, born in Edinburgh, Scotland. Happy birthday, sir. Rowan Keating, 1977, he was born in Dublin. 1991, Los Angeles police severely beat a motorist. His name was Rodney King. You'd remember the scandal. The beating is famously captured by amateur video and later leads to riots when the police officers involved were acquitted. Jennifer Warnes, American singer, arranger, producer, Up Where We Belong. But I loved her version of the famous Blue Raincoat. Did you ever hear that, Pete?
Oh, yes.
Leonard Cohen?
Yeah.
His version is great. You'd expect that because he wrote it. But her version, I think, is regarded as the gold standard. She probably had the biggest hit of it. US President Andrew Jackson and Congress recognized the Republic of Texas on this day in 1837. Lou Costello, part of Abbott and Costello, dies of a heart attack at just 52. That was in 1959. Oh, that was a good show, Moonlighting, with Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis. Premieres on ABC TV in the US on this day in 1985. It was just something about that, the way the chemistry between them was something about that show that was different and therefore good. Got to be different. A bit like the Court of Public Opinion, I think. Dear. What else? Toronto's Dr. Banting and Dr. Best announce that they have discovered insulin. That was this day in 1921. Camilla Parker Bowles, aged 46, and her husband, retired Army Brigadier Andrew Parker Bowles, he was 55, divorce after 21 years of marriage. That was in 1995. Ex-Prime Minister of Australia Bob Hawke weds his first wife. That was Hazel back in 1956. And I'll give you one more. The Star-Spangled Banner officially becomes the US national anthem in 1931. Wasn't Cissy Houston, was it? What was Cissy Houston's daughter's name? She was probably more famous than Whitney, yes. Whitney Houston's version of the Star-Spangled Banner is amazing. I just love that.
That's a beautiful anthem.
It is, isn't it? Just fabulous. Interesting stories that we've got here. The unions have warned that there is a real chance here in Australia that we will have a shortage of gas, particularly in Victoria but Australia generally, and that is by the middle of this winter. Now, this left-wing government, and they've got a left-wing government in Victoria and they have a left-wing government in Canberra, they will not allow us to exploit the natural gas advantages that we have. Huge, very valuable resources. They don't want any new gas developments, and Bass Strait is running out. That's a fact. This whole policy is selfish, stupid, self-imposed nonsense, if you ask me. It'd be like the Saudi Arabians suddenly saying, oh, petrol, cars, no, climate change. No, we can't pump any more oil, we can't sell any more oil. We'll go back to being the Bedouin desert dwellers before the Americans came and exploited our resources. That's so damn silly. Apart from new exploration, the whole thing about us being short of gas is so stupid. But really we should have an Australia First policy. An Australia First policy on just about everything. A policy that says, and including gas, we export an awful lot of gas. There is nothing wrong with self-interest. We look after ourselves first, and if there is some left over, we can export and exploit for financial gain that on the world market, at world prices. But let's satisfy our own market first. We've got $1 trillion worth of national debt, which is pretty scary. Interest rates are going up. Repayments are hundreds of millions of dollars a week. Can you get your mind around that? Hundreds of millions of dollars a week. So the government has got to do something. They are there to manage things. They put their hand up for the job, which means they think they can do the job. That doesn't give them the right, however, to plunder people's superannuation. There is no doubt that they're going after the baby boomers. We will matter less and less in political eyes, I'm sure. The Prime Minister promised at the election, his words, I'll quote them here, "We have no intention of touching superannuation." And now he's dancing around the word intention. That was my intention, but people keep coming to me saying, we've got to do something. Well, of course they do. But who are these people who keep talking to you, Prime Minister? Could you name them? If the Prime Minister is looking for money, which I can understand, the NDIS alone has the potential to send the country broke. But if you need money, sir, can I suggest that you start taxing, well, where would we start? Phony charities. Phony charities. Charities that are not charities, but big business, like the AFL, the NFL, Tennis Australia, the AJC, Australian Jockey Club. Now, all of these people pay no tax whatsoever. What about taxing the gambling industry? I think that's worth about $200 billion a year. Why don't you tax that? A special gaming tax. A gaming tax. Between phony charities and gambling, the gambling industry, you've got about $750 million there to play with. And one of the things you can do with taxation, you can reprioritize the country. What I'm saying is, if you tax it, you'll get less of it. If you subsidize it, you will get more of it. It's a very simple rule of thumb. And I, for one, would want fewer charities or people masquerading as charities and paying no tax. I'd want fewer of them, and I would want a smaller gambling industry, and I would want more people who are self-sufficient. And I think the best way to get self-sufficient people is to encourage and reward people who put their money into superannuation. Just a thought, Prime Minister. And you might have a very good point about the amount of money that goes in, but you've got to stop fiddling with superannuation. We need a predictable, reliable and sensible superannuation system, but more importantly, of course, we need politicians whose word we can trust. In the paper that came out on Tuesday, they trumpeted superannuation breaks cost the federal budget $50 billion a year. $50 billion a year. But hang on a second. That seems to assume that the government has some right to that money in the first place. You can't count money that is not yours and was not yours. That money belongs to Australians, us. The government has no entitlement to it. Stop assuming that our only purpose in life is to run around, work hard, slave away, so that we can hand over large amounts of money for you to waste. I well remember Terry Packer in front of the Senate that famous day when he was questioned about minimising his tax. And he looked at me, I think they were genuinely shaking in their shoes, those senators. He said something along the lines of, well, of course I minimise my tax. Of course I do. And I say to you, every Australian would be a fool if he didn't. And in any case, I'm not particularly pleased with what you do with the money I already give you. Don't want to give you any more. Anyway, they all parted friends, and I think they were suitably impressed by his logic. Yeah. If I've got time for one more. The overprescription of antibiotics has led to a very startling warning that I heard on Wednesday morning. Apparently we're creating a situation here in Australia where superbugs will potentially, worldwide I mean, potentially kill 10 million people a year. 10 million. And that's basically because people will not have any defence against pretty common infections. We are simply becoming immune to the effectiveness of antibiotics through overuse. And sadly, the drug companies say that the pathway to get new antibiotics developed is so expensive and so complicated from a regulatory point of view that they are not encouraged to work on finding new ones. Reward and incentive. Very good encouragement for all sorts of advancements. Now, the other problem that I don't hear a lot of people talking about is the enormous use of antibiotics on the farm animals, particularly chickens, which of course find their way into the food chain. And I really don't know what we do about any of that. We are far used to reaching for antibiotics either for agricultural purposes or for personal purposes. I don't know how we would take to having them rationed. And if the battery lasts, Pete, you see, we started today with a slightly dubious battery. I want to talk to you about this football player thing, which I find outrageous, strange. Football players are going to take on the establishment. They're going to sue the establishment for brain damage done while they were playing football or are playing football. Seems such a strange world we're creating. These people signed up willingly to join the game. You know, no one forced them into it. They made a great deal of money. A lot of them made a great deal of money and do make a great deal of money in a football career. And that doesn't seem to matter. Nor does it matter that there is such a thing as personal choice and personal responsibility. And I think we have known for decades the dangers and problems associated with concussion. You go into things really with your eyes open. And I guess you take advice. You know, can you imagine if I signed up to be a test pilot with the inevitable life-threatening risks? I can't imagine my grieving widow suing because I was a highly paid test pilot. Or what do you reckon the bloke who tastes Vladimir Putin's dinner? Wonder what Vladimir Putin's food taster gets paid. Well, you sign up to a job like that, you know, you're taking risks. No, I'm sorry. I just don't see. And they're talking about having a go at the various football codes for about $1 billion. It's beyond me. Sometimes I really do think that the world has gone mad, and that you and I are about the only, and Pete, you and I and Pete are the only sane people. You have a lovely weekend. Thank you for viewing. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Pete and I will be back Monday. Believe in yourself, and goodbye for now.